over 20 years ago, I came down with cancer, and so we switched over to organic produce and organic stuff in our house, soaps, detergents, everything else. And since that time, our kids never got a cold or a flu. Even though the school was maybe wiped out with a flu, our kids never got it because of the organics. But still, my wife has had a frustration with medical issues, and I've been struggling with certain things. And we went to see a researcher in orthomolecular medicine. She showed us a method of applied kinesiology where you actually take a pendulum and you hold it over something, and if your body wants it, the pendulum will swing one way, and if your body doesn't want it, it'll swing the other way. It has to do with how the nerves travel down to the hand, and then it's demonstrated if the nerves take on a pattern, it's demonstrated then in the swinging of the pendulum. Well, then I discovered that if I place my hand on like salt, for instance, and if I put my pendulum over like a potato chip, it will start to run negative, detecting the salt. And if I take my hand off the salt, it will then start to go positive because it detects the potassium, because salt and potassium balance each other out. And so we made a mineral stick so that we could actually detect what is in substances by using that method. And then if you want to know more about that, see my video Pendulum Science. And then a friend of mine introduced us to ormus, and by taking ormus, it actually allowed us to tap into an ethereal library for minerals, or not minerals, but elements, anything on the periodic table, where we can actually think a mineral or something on the periodic table, and it will tell us clockwise. If it's not present, it'll just be neutral back and forth. If it is present, it will go counterclockwise over the object. So the 118 elements on the periodic table, we can actually detect them because of the ormus. And if you want to see more information on that, see an ormus mystery, the video that I made there. Well, once we discovered that, then we were in for another surprise, because we eat organics, we eat healthy, and we started testing our stool samples, and we started testing our urine, and we come to find out that we have a high level of toxins coming out in our urine and our stools. And it's like, where in the world we're actually being recontaminated? Although we're going all organic, we're getting recontaminated. And particularly we were finding lead, mercury, arsenic, aluminum, cadmium, barium, cyanide, and antimony. And we started looking up, trying to figure out where in the world this stuff was coming from, and we come to find out that these are compounds or elements that are found in plastic. Now, there's a lot of other nasty things in plastic, phthalates and chemicals and stuff, but using our testing, we cannot test for chemicals, or we can only test for elements. But even with just detecting the elements, we were absolutely shocked at the toxins that we were being recontaminated with. And let me take you on a little journey here. Most of us are aware of the toxins and stuff that are found in a cigarette. And I do not smoke, but I did find this on the ground, so I tested it out. And of course, we found uranium in here. We found cobalt in here. We found arsenic in here. We found antimony in here, lead and mercury, aluminum, nasty things like that. And that's not even counting the chemicals that are in here. And I don't mind if people smoke, but I think it's a little immoral for them to then ask people to help them with their medical bills because they decided to smoke. But a lot of the toxic things that are in there, we found were also in our organic foods. For example, my wife didn't like the fact that I was using chapsticks, so she got me this organic Sally B's organic lip yummy stuff, unscented organic. And we went and tested it, and it had lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, the nasty stuff from plastic, because they were using a cheap plastic that leaches into the lip balm. So here, even though the fact that it was organic, it was now toxic because of the container that was in. And then I checked my my other chapsticks that I was using, and it was actually in a good container and was not leaching into there. Of course, I cannot tell any for the chemicals, but here we thought we were doing good by going organic, but the organic people put it in a toxic plastic container that was leaching in here. Now let me tell you something about leaching. I don't know if you're familiar with oil pulling, but oil is very it pulls. There's a method called oil pulling where you take olive oil, put a teaspoon in your mouth, swish it around for about a minute, spit it out, and then spit out all saliva for the next half hour. And the reason for that is it will start to pull toxins out of your mouth. And if you swallow that saliva, it will be very, very toxic. So you have to you know, spit it out. But anything that is creamy or oily pulls toxins into it. And this is one of the problems that we are running into, because here you see this beautiful organic stuff. Well, guess what they put inside here? It's all glass. Look at this. That little rim in there is toxic. And that stuff, if this is laid on its side, ends up in the olive oil, which we end up consuming. Now people will say, well, you know, you're only getting a little bit of the lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, antimony. Every time you use this, you get a little bit. It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. We get overloaded by not just in our food we have the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, preservatives, flavor enhancers, colors, all the antibiotics, the steroids and stuff that are given to our animals. That's the chemical stuff, but also there's the toxins in the plastic that also go into it, and it builds up in the body. And the American diet, we have so much chemical in our diet, in our air, in our water, that the bodies are just overloaded with it. Let me show you some other shocking things here. My wife's her back started to break out, and we come to find out it was this stuff. Just Natural organic hair product, natural detangler. They put it in toxic plastic, and because it's oily, it absorbed the plastic. She was putting this on her hair, going into the sauna. She would sweat. This stuff would drip down her back, and the toxins would go into her back, and her back was breaking out because of the lead and mercury and arsenic that was in the plastic that was then in the hair stuff and then was in her skin. So here we thought we were going natural, and we ended up, she was actually poisoning herself, because these guys did not use a good plastic container. If you see a container that's certified non-toxic, then you've got something to work with. I'm very impressed with David Wolf and his products, Suzanne Somers and her products, because they are non-toxic. Here's some other shockers. Aloe vera. Guess what? Cheap plastic. This stuff is contaminated. We had to throw it out because it's so contaminated with the lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, antimony. And antimony is a really bad one that's in plastics. But that's all in the aloe vera. So you rub it on your skin, it goes in, contaminates you. This stuff, we use it in the summer, put it away, tested it. It was toxic because of the plastic container that was put into. Our kelp. You know, you think, oh, that's great. No. Toxic plastic. The kelp was contaminated. This stuff, eye solution, Walgreens, soothing eye wash, bad container. The stuff was toxic. Look at this, udder ointment, bad container. The stuff is toxic. You put this on, it absorbs into your skin, you get contaminated by this stuff. Here we got this stuff, certified organic vanilla extract. This stuff is very, very high in lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium. And what we found out is that almonds, the skin of the almond, have those things on it. And I do not know if it's the way it's prepped. I don't know if it's a natural preservative that's in the almonds. But that is concentrated in here and very, very toxic. My wife was reacting to that. Excuse me, I'm saying almonds. I was thinking I was holding this one. This is the almond extract that was contaminated. This one, vanilla extract, was contaminated. And what we figured is going on here is stainless steel, like this cheap stainless steel pot. The government allows 0.01% of contaminants to be in here, and this would be like your lead and your aluminum and the nasties. But when you're distilling, and particularly the alcohol that's in here, when you're distilling alcohol in stainless steel, it pulls out those toxins and it goes into the alcohol. Now the almond also had alcohol, but almonds themselves actually have, when we eat almonds, we have to actually take the skin off because the skin has got so much lead and mercury in it. But who'd have thunk? This was stuff that we were putting in our juices all the time, recontaminating ourselves. Pure lanolin, 100% pure lanolin. You'd think that'd be good for you. Yeah, it would be, but they put it in cheap plastic. So now it's contaminated. It's junk. Here was our real shocker. Who doesn't like a essential oil? These things are so wonderful for you, but same thing as with the olive oil. That is a toxic little rim. That plastic. And this stuff always gets stored on its side. So the lead, mercury, and arsenic go into the oil, and you rub it into your body, and you contaminate yourself by the plastics that's in that little rim in there. The vitamin B, we found out this was contaminated because of the plastic. Thought that was bad. Look at this, Ziploc bags. Come to find out they are contaminating food, especially if the food is oily or acid. If it has acid or oil in it, it contaminates it really, really quickly. So what we have to do with our food is we have to put a layer of wax paper over our food before we can put it into these bags, or even use saran wrap on it. We have to protect the food from the saran wrap, from the Ziploc bags. This is the pan here that I got from Walmart, a nice cheap pan. We'd been using that, and what we did to test it, we put water in there, tested the water, it was pure, it was good, boiled the water, and then poured it out and tested it, and the water was now contaminated by lead, mercury, and arsenic, and cadmium and antimony because of the stuff that was coming off the pan, the contaminants that were allowed to be in there. And when we use oil, it pulls it out. When we boil stuff in there, it pulls it out. So we had to throw it away and go to surgical stainless pots. This was a shocker. Organic Valley, raw cheddar cheese. Love this stuff. Cheap plastic. Here we were paying an arm and a leg for organic, and they put it in cheap plastic. So now we have to take and cut a 1/4 inch of the cheese off in order to get down to cheese that's not contaminated by this plastic. And here I went and bought some regular cheese in a store that's not organic, and they have it in good plastic. So it really pisses me off that they would put that much quality into it and claim all organic when they put it in cheap plastic like that. That is just absolutely frustrating. Who doesn't like a little coffee mate creamer? Cheap plastic. As a matter of fact, this has been sitting in the back of our cupboard for several years. Come to find out, the creamer that's in there is more toxic now than the plastic. It reads heavier in lead, mercury, and arsenic than the plastic itself because it's absorbed it into it, because this stuff is so creamy. And I have tested coffee mate creamer that's fresh, and even the coffee mate creamer without being in the plastic still has the nasty dastardlies in it. Who'd have thunk? Who doesn't like putting these into your coffee? Same thing. Toxic plastic in oil, in cream, ending up in the stuff that you drink. Tested Splenda. Lead and mercury are found in here. Oh man. Look at this. A receipt. Who'd have thought? But they have toxic lead and mercury, arsenic, aluminum, and antimony in the ink. So when you take a receipt like this, it goes into your hand and penetrates into your skin. Pure leaf, unsweetened pure leaf, fresh brew, looks good, toxic. Poured this stuff out into a container, to test it. Lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium, all the plastics are in the tea because they use cheap disposable plastic. The acid in Mountain Dew and in Coca-Cola rapidly absorb the plastics and the phthalates and the chemicals into what you're drinking. Dasani water. I just picked this up. Somebody had drank it and set it aside, so I picked it up, tested the water in there. Contaminated because of the plastics that's in there. And one of the worst things is this. People go to a restaurant, the oil that people fry with, you never think about it, but it comes in toxic plastics totes like this. All your food, all your fries, all your hamburgers, all your eggs are fried in this stuff, and this oil has been sitting in toxic plastic, absorbing the toxins. The toxins go into the oil goes into the food goes into you. And then what happens in the body is that the body gets this overload of all these toxins from the pop that you're drinking, from the things that are getting you in the other direction there. Body is overloaded, and when it breaks down the oils or breaks down whatever else you're taking, and it's got all these toxins, it cannot process all the toxins from the plastics. And so what it does is it actually reverses the process, and it starts to store the toxins by making fat storage. And so much of the obesity that we have, that we see, is not because oil is fat or fattening food. It actually has to do with the toxins that are in the oil, toxins that are in the fat, toxins that are in the fries from the plastic that is actually stored in. So people become overweight because they're toxic overloaded. And I recommend the books of David Wolfe and Suzanne Somers, especially her new book that she has out, TOX-SICK, because she goes into detail about where the stuff is coming from and how to deal with it. But we were actually just shocked. As a matter of fact, we went through my wife's makeup, and her makeup, and I don't have an example of it here, but her makeup, 2/3 of it we had to throw out, especially the dark eyeliner and stuff, because the lead and mercury was so concentrated in it. Had to throw even Maybelline and high expensive brands for the darkness. There was a lot of toxins that were in them and had to throw them out. We found that clothing, especially like my dark camo pants, a lot of them come from China. They're very, very toxic, and we actually had to soak them in vinegar and other solutions to try to get the toxins out of them, and wash them several times until they read that they were clean of these things, because the dyes and stuff that are in them are very, very, very toxic. So here's our toxic shock. I mean, here we thought that we were doing so good, and we come to find out we're getting so contaminated. So we have really had to go through and start testing things, start rebuying things, and it's just it's just surprising. But so I recommend you look at those books, and because we're all getting hit by this stuff.